It's an orange juice.
What's up, everyone? This is Oj. There are a lot of different archetypes in the game. Right now, you can build 64 trillion different types of decks and deploy millions of different strategies inside the arena. So it's not as simple as rock, paper, scissors, as some say, where there are only 3 variables. There's a new archetype surfacing the meta. But before we get into that, let's talk about the current ones where you may have already heard about. The beatdown archetype is the type of deck where you have heavy tanks. Think Golem, or P.E.K.K.A, or even the Lava Hound. It doesn't necessarily always need Golem in there, but the general way of beatdown is that you can afford to trade 2,500 tower damage and even lose that Princess Tower to gain a 10 or even a 20 elixir lead so they can build up a mega push in the opposite lane. This doesn't always result in a 3 crown, but the principle is that you can afford to trade tower health for elixir. Then you have the control archetype. This plays different from beatdown. You don't trade tower health for elixir. You trade units to gain more elixir potential on the map. Splashnado plays like control. You only play bowler when there's an incoming hog or something else big. The hog may get one hit on your tower, but now you're up a full health 5 elixir bowler and they're down 4 elixir. You use this 5 elixir bowler advantage to counterattack. Right as he crosses the bridge, you'll have graveyard and poison. They won't have nearly as much elixir to defend against the bowler, and the cheap units won't be enough to defend the graveyard poison combo. The cycle archetype is really iconic. Think 2.6 hog. This is where you can afford small pushes like a 4 elixir hog to get one hit on their tower. You'll be down elixir, but you can defend almost everything with Ice Spirit, Skeletons, or even the Ice Golem. Once you've defended with these cheap cards, you've already cycled back to your hog and they have no counters to the hog. You cycle them out of rotation. And then you've got bridge spam where you put stuff down at the bridge at the right moment, of course. And you're going to be able to destroy the tower with these really aggressive fast units. Siege is an iconic archetype and one that I use during my level 8 days because you engage from your side of the river. The strength of Siege is that you never need to engage from the enemy side. Thus, you're able to take on higher level towers. Hence, why many of the Siege archetypes have Rocket as a finisher card. We've got Bait, which surfaced into the meta in 2017. This is where we started seeing more cards being introduced, such as the Dart Goblin and the Princess. This really requires you to card count their log or fireball arrows or whatever spell they have and know when it's out of rotation for you to connect your bait card like a Goblin Barrel onto their tower. This is the perfect example of an archetype that starts to surface because of the continual release of new cards and new mechanics. Spawners are a subcategory of control. A true spawner deck places down buildings to gain a passive elixir advantage by simply having more units exist on the map. Now, we've got the dual lane archetype. This has existed for as long as 3 Musketeers have existed, but were not viable when it first came out in February of 2016 because the 3 Musketeers, they cost 10 elixir back then. Then the following month in March of 2016, they were buffed to cost only 9 elixir. This is when people started to see the potential of this card. You could place them in the back and you could still kind of manage to defend with Skeletons, Goblins, Spear Goblins, really cheap units back then. Now come July of 2016, the Ice Spirit is released. The 3M card starts to make more sense. You're able to lower the average cost of this deck and it becomes more and more viable as time passes. October 2016. The dual lane archetype is starting to see options now. The Ice Golem is invented. It pairs well with the Miner. Players are starting to dual lane pressure with 3 Musketeers. The pioneers of 3M such as Darth Jar Jar are starting to become respected as pro 3M players. But it's still a volatile card that costs too much and doesn't quite make sense in pro plays consistently yet. Then come February of 2017. The Battle Ram is released. This is the secondary tank that solidifies its position in the 3M archetype, not only to add pressure in one lane with the complements of an Ice Golem, but also to act as a lightning rod for 2 Musketeers when you know it's coming. December 2017. Zappies are released into the game. Not quite enough to put the dual lane archetype on the map just yet, too fragile. Though we're starting to see more cards you can split. Some say players are still waiting for OJ's Zappy Tech video, but have learned to split Zappies without the video. June 2018, Piglets are released into the game. They can be split. This is the moment the dual lane archetype cements itself into the meta with more than just 3M. These babies are one of the most unique cards in the game because of their special role to fit into the dual lane archetype. Have you ever wondered why you lose to 3M? When the Musketeers are split, you can only choose one side to Fireball or to Rocket. Although that 3M player is probably going to have a pump, and that's going to give you an ultimatum. Do you Fireball the pump, or do you Fireball 2 Musketeers? In the end, why this archetype works so well is because it gives you the option to pressure both lanes. You can choose which lane to go heavy on, based on how they defend. As someone defending, you might have to oppose an Ice Golem with 2 Musketeers on one side, because that combo alone is guaranteed to destroy your Prince's Tower completely. If you put Skeletons down, there are not enough to take out those 2 Musketeers hiding behind that Ice Golem. Your opponent knows this, and they adjust accordingly and pressure the other side even harder. So now you've lost your tower on the weaker side just because you spent all of your resources attacking on the stronger, more threatening side, and it was absolutely necessary to defend that more threatening side. There are a lot of different kinds of dual lane pushes since there are more and more cards getting added into the game every month. One of the best and most popular dual lane archetypes involves 3 Musketeers. But even when you use 3 Musketeers, there's going to be sub-archetypes within this archetype. 3M Bridge Spam is one of the most classics of 2017. It's got Bandit, it's got Battle Ram, it's got Dark Prince. This deck works pretty well with or without the Elixir Collector. You basically build positive trades throughout the game until you gain an Elixir lead and double Elixir to plant the 3 Musketeers when the window of opportunity opens. Sometimes you don't even have that window. You don't need to play 3M with this archetype because the Battle Ram, the Bandit, and the Dark Prince alone are generally enough power to take out a tower without even revealing the 3 Musketeers. Another archetype is 3M Fireball Bait. These decks have Minion Horde and Elixir Collector. For the sub-archetype, you need to pay attention to what they use their Fireball on, or if they use it on their Collector. You'll have full strength 3M or Horde at the center of the river, with the option to drop the Minion Horde depending on what cards they have. Although, just because they used Fireball on your Minion Horde does not mean that it is safe to pump up. They could have the Miner. And just because their Fireball is baited out, this does not mean it's a free ticket to plant 3 Musketeers on the bridge. They could have a Valkyrie or something inexpensive that's still going to wreck your Musketeers without the Fireball. Another sub-archetype of 3M is Cycle, without Collector. With these cheap cycly support units, you've got the opportunity to cycle quicker to 3M for defense or for offense, keeping constant pressure on your opponents while also giving you the option to be able to defend with 1 or even 2 Elixir cards. Then we've got Beatdown Giant 3M decks. This is one of the best decks in the meta right now just because it can bait out almost every card. There's the Elixir Collector, Minion Horde, and 3M for the Fireball. Then you've got the Bats, you've got the Goblins, you've got the Ram, and they're all going to bait out Zap or the Log. And of course, you've got the cheapy yet tanky Giant that pressures one of the lanes. In this archetype, where you want to build a big push, you need to absorb damage in one of the lanes to allow yourself to build a bigger push. Sometimes you might even lose a tower, but your push will be way more powerful and you'll end up 3 crowning them. It's 2018. There are now dual lane archetypes that don't all revolve around 3 Musketeers. Finally, with the introduction of Piglets, you've got even more choices. You can split pressure both lanes. 2-2 if you plant them on the center 2 tiles. Or if you're feeling frisky, you can do a 1-3 plant, planting them slightly off center on these tiles so that 1 goes in one lane and 3 go into the other lane, so you can decide which lane you want to apply even more pressure on. If you don't have counters for it, they're normally played at the river for an instant split push. This can throw off your opponent when you've got support units on both sides. It can be difficult to defend dual lane pushes, but one of the best cards for addressing this type of split is going to be Fire Spirits. They have Fireball damage and they only cost 2 Elixir, so you can commit it on 1 lane. And as a bonus, if they play all 4 Piglets in 1 lane, you betcha those Fire Spirits are going to demolish those Piggies for 2 Elixir. Zappies have been around for a while now. In the last half of this year, they start to surface into the meta. With their newfound strength, they definitely fit in this new dual lane archetype. They provide the ability to slow down enemy troops not only on defense, but on offense as well. Adding them in with piglets changes the dynamic of this deck. Now you have fireball bait options. If they fireball the Zappies, you can go full force with piglets in one lane. If they try to save the fireball for your piglets, you can split those piglets. They can't fireball both lanes. So they all have things in common. When you see a certain combination of cards, you can start to feel what type of decks you're playing. If you see a pump, it's gonna most likely be a golem or even a 3M deck. The split pushes usually have at least 2 types of cheap costing mini tanks like Ice Golem Knight, Valkyrie, Miner, Hog, Bandit, Battle Ram, Dark Prince, and of course, the piglets. I don't like talking about archetypes too much because there are all these subcategories, all of these hybrids. It's not rock, paper, scissors. P.E.K.K.A does not hard counter Golem. It soft counters Golem. It depends on the hybrid of that archetype. Thanks for watching.